Hello, my name is Barbara Kay, and on behalf of my co-host, Susan Pertnoy and the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, I'd like to welcome you to our program, Mosaic.
Our special focus today is celebrating our Jewish community. Our guests are CEO of the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, David Phillips, and Martin Fletcher, the Tel Aviv Bureau Chief and Foreign Correspondent for NBC News. We'll be back with our program and our very special guests after this brief message.
Thousands of community members come together through programs and services provided by Federation and our local partner agencies to create a vibrant and vital community in Palm Beach County. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
Welcome back, and welcome to you, David Phillips, the CEO of our Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
It's great to be here, Susan.
David, can you tell us what the mission is of our federation?
Sure. It's a very complex organization. So I want to go the most simplistic way to explain it is we're here to help the vulnerable, the needy, both domestically and globally. We do a fabulous job of stepping towards problems and ensuring people get the help they need to the best of our ability with the help of good people like you and the rest of the community.
You've been here, I think you're almost celebrating or about to celebrate your second anniversary.
Absolutely.
And you're smiling.
I'm still here.
Well, that's terrific. One of your priorities is community building.
Yeah.
Tell me why that's so important.
Dialogue is the route to success, and when we build positive, transparent, meaningful relationships, we progress and we get closer to the end result, which is a vibrant and vital community. And that's the goal. So I think that the community building at its most basic is about relationships.
Well, that's wonderful. And you've also launched a campaign, a capital campaign called Tomorrow Today. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, the Tomorrow Today campaign is a community partnership project, and it really is looking at the needs of an entire community and bringing it under the Federation's umbrella to raise the money to ensure the infrastructure is there for the future. And that's what we're doing. And we're being pretty successful right now.
The faces of the donors and fundraising is changing. And looking towards the future, what do you see the role of our Federation?
That's a great question. I think the fundamental values haven't changed. And I think that roots us in the future as well. But I think you're right, the methodology is changing. We need to be closer and better at building relationships, being more responsive to donor needs, and being more dynamic in the way we use that valuable resource, the money that people are so kind to give us. We need to be very, very dynamic with the way we spend that money to ensure excellent value and better impact. I think that's the wave of the future in general.
David, thank you for joining us tonight.
It's a
and we're
pleasure.
actually here for a celebration of the donors for the 2014 annual campaign. And the guest speaker tonight is Martin Fletcher.
Yep.
We're all looking forward to
Absolutely.
hearing from him, and Barbara's going to interview him. So we'll be back with the remainder of our program after this brief message.
Through our partner agency programs in Israel, Federation creates opportunities for at-risk youth, families, and seniors. We also provide emergency assistance to the victims of terrorism. Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
Welcome to Mosaic and to Florida.
Thank you.
Martin Fletcher. What
Thank
a
you very
pleasure
much.
to have
Thank
you
you.
here. You know something, you're an amazing guy. I picked up all your books and went through most of them, and I was amazed. But we're going to talk about them a little bit later. But first, I'm curious. You have been all over this dramatic, crazy world in some dramatic, crazy positions. How do you do it? How do you stand there where there's bombs flying all around, people are dying, and you're standing there calmly reporting the whole thing? Tell me how that goes.
Maybe not so calmly. But, you know, you don't choose to be in those kinds of places at those moments. You know, we cover the news, we go around the world because it's important and it's interesting to me, of course. And then things happen around you. So I think we're as surprised as anybody else by the drama, to be honest. I mean, it's not something I seek out. I don't seek out danger. Although people often say that my threshold for danger may be different from most other people's. But I'm not a danger seeker or a thrill seeker. I go to these places because I'm interested in the people and what they're going through. And I want to tell their stories.
For 35 years, you started in a very interesting way. You started, from what I've read, by being an associate, and then you were standing with a cameraman who was photographing the incident that they were reporting about. And tell what happened at that experience. When he got killed, and you picked up the camera. Go ahead.
Well, I was a cameraman with the Viz News, which is today Reuters TV. And the BBC cameraman was tired on that day and asked for the day off, and they said to me, would you take his place? So I did. And I went with them. And I made the biggest mistake of my life, which was to listen to their correspondent. Because normally, I only did what I wanted to do. I judged what was safe. And we went with, but I figured, you know, I'm with the BBC on this one day, I'll do what they say. And they made a decision which I thought was wrong when they made the decision, and I said so. And what happened was we ended up in the middle of a minefield.
Minefield, right.
We drove into a minefield, and at a certain point we realized where we were. And there was a convoy of 4 cars. We were the first. And my sound man, Ted Stoddart, who was a friend of mine, got out of the car to tell the other guys to stop. And he trod on a landmine, and he was blown up. And he died. I mean, he was as close to me as you are. I was sitting in the car, he was standing outside, and he was blown up. And that was a bit of a shock.
I would say.
By the time we recovered from this shock, most people panicked. There were 11 journalists in the 4 cars. One was killed, 8 were wounded. And I took the camera and filmed everything. And that was my...
You were surprised that you really filmed something, if I remember correctly from the book, because you weren't sure. You were so nervous.
Well, no, actually, I thought I had filmed more than I had.
Oh, was that it?
Yeah, it was the other way around. I thought I'd filmed the whole incident. Then it turned out I had less than I thought. But you know, I was in shock the whole time. I was trembling so much I couldn't hold the camera steady in the beginning.
Yes.
And then so that was probably what I didn't have. What I thought I was seeing, I didn't film it. But then when I, got myself under control, it took, I guess, 20 seconds or something, I started filming, and then the car behind us, a guy called Paul Rock, who was a very close friend of mine, an AP photographer. He went to help Ted, and I filmed him as he went to help Ted. Then he trod on the landmine, and he got blown up. And I filmed him walking and treading on the landmine and getting blown up. And the correspondent I was with, Simon Dring, he was also blown up. Basically, a lot of people were seriously wounded. And I was just incredibly fortunate, because I got out of the car, and I was very careful where I put my feet, of course, and didn't move, and filmed everything that I could.
No, but the idea of being able to stand back, when you think about it, and disassociate yourself with what's going on around you, and just keep going, that's incredible. I mean, you were, I think you were 26 years old in 1973, I think, for the Yom Kippur War, and you landed in Haifa.
Good. Good maths.
I'm reading your books.
Okay.
You landed in Haifa, and the Yom Kippur War started. Explain what happened.
Well, I thought I was going to a quiet, sunny assignment, in the 1st of
on
October.
The beach.
Yeah, on the beach on the 1st of October, 1973. And a week later, the war broke out. And I was told, quick, go to the Golan Heights. I didn't know where the Golan Heights was. My reaction was, you're kidding, it's dangerous, there's a war going on. But I was a news cameraman. That was my first exposure to that kind of situation. So I got in the car and drove there and began to cover the war. And then I was on the Golan Heights for about a week, and then which was a terrible time to be there, because that was when the Syrians almost overran northern Israel. And then I went, when that calmed down and Israel took control of the heights, I went down to the Sinai. And actually, I was the world pool cameraman to cross the canal with Eric Sharon.
Eric Sharon.
So that was an incredible experience
for
a young guy like me who had no experience, or rather had 1 week experience at that time.
Amazing.
So I was really baptism of fire.
Yeah, but actually, you made your home in Israel at this point.
Well, in '73, I arrived in '73. I met a girl, an army sergeant, hitchhiking in 1974. I picked her up. She's my wife and still is today.
I know, beautiful woman.
Yeah, but then I left in 75 to go to Africa, and I went back in 1982, and I've lived in Israel since 1982.
Then, with your children.
Who were born in Israel, yeah.
Yeah. You wrote this book called Walking Israel, a personal search for the soul of a nation. First of all, explain how you wrote this book, why you wrote the book, and what has the response to this book been, literally?
Well, first I should say I hate the title.
You hate the title?
Yeah, it was a publisher's title, Walking Israel, but a personal search for the soul of a nation. I had a much better title. I thought I'd always wanted to walk along the coast of Israel, which I did from the north to the south,
yes,
with my son. And I was going to call the book The Father, the Son, and the Holy Coast.
I like that.
Yeah, but the publisher didn't.
No, he didn't like that. I like that.
Yeah, everyone does, but the publisher didn't. So now it's called, a personal search for the soul of a nation. Well, I wanted to tell the story of Israel from a different point of view. I'd been covering Israel, as everybody else had been for decades, from the point of view of the conflict. So Israel was always about the Israelis and the Palestinians and the peace and war and the conflict. And most people don't know anything about Israel unless you're really particularly interested. Apart from, that's a dangerous place. And people are always calling me and saying, hey, is it safe to visit Israel? And I said, of course it is. And then a week later, they'd come and call me and say, what a great place, I had no idea. So I wanted to write a book about that great place that people have no idea about.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? You also wrote about the challenges of being an Israeli, that we're not a perfect people, that we do make mistakes, but in the main, we've done a remarkable thing. And so much of the media is so negative in regard to Israel today. It's very disturbing to me. Doesn't it bother you?
It bothers me a lot, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course I'm part of that, because for decades we only report on Israel when there's a moment of conflict. I always say about journalism, we're the exclamation marks, we're the punctuation of a book. We just report. You only hear about Israel on the news when there's an exclamation mark, when there's a question mark, when there's some dramatic moment. And those dramatic moments, because it's a place of conflict, are normally to do with conflict, wars, bombs, etc. So all people know about Israel, or mostly, is the conflict. And that's partly my fault, because I'm a mainstream media kind of guy, and that's what we do. That's why I wrote the book. We do many other kinds of stories too. Features about high tech and agriculture, all kinds of movies.
Right.
But they get lost in the general noise of the conflict.
No, it's the conflict that everybody wants to hear about, and the more negative, the better. And as I always say, perception is 95% of reality. So you have to be very careful when you say something negative about Israel, because it's blown out of proportion. I mean, it's a normal place with normal people. Although I think they're extraordinary, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, I was with you until there. A normal place? I don't think so. Normal people? Well, maybe. But I was
trying to be level the whole thing.
In an extraordinary situation. They're called upon to do extraordinary things because of the role they're in. Yeah. But, I wouldn't agree completely with what you say, because we don't only look for the negative, and I'm not only talking about myself personally, as a representative of the media, if you like.
All right.
We report what we see as being the news. And we're always, or certainly I am very often criticized for being biased. Actually, when people criticize you for being biased, they're really saying, I don't agree with what you said.
Okay.
So my role is not to be, I believe, is not to be biased or unbiased or objective or not objective, because you can't satisfy everybody all the time. All I really try hard to do is to be fair to the people on whom I'm reporting. So if I go to a Palestinian family in a refugee camp, I want to tell their story as fairly as I can. And then when I do the same, when I go to an Israeli family and tell their story wherever they are, Jewish settlers, wherever they are, I want to tell their story as fairly as I can. I don't try to be objective. I just try to be fair.
Well, that's basically what I sense in the book when I read it, when I read this book. Actually, I recommend the book. I loved it.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah. On that note, we'll take a break. We'll be back with the remainder of our program after this brief message.
Our Jewish Federation has accomplished so much and still needs keep growing. You can help us do even more. Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
Welcome back to Mosaic. Prior to the break, we were talking about walking Israel. What was the name you wanted? I forget.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy
Coast. That's it.
Didn't happen.
Now, this was really an impactful experience, but I tell you, every one of your books have been. What made you go from realism, in a sense, to fiction?
First, I always wanted to write fiction as a challenge. And then at a certain point, I realized that as a Jew, I wanted to write about the Jewish experience in a way that I could. So I did lots of research. And, as a journalist, we answer all those famous questions: who, where, what, when, the rest of it, how, why. I forget what they all are.
Okay.
But you don't really ever get to the heart of what it's like to be that person. And I think that fiction, in that sense, can be more truthful than non-fiction, in the sense that you try to get under the skin of the people and understand what they experienced. So that's what I wanted to try and do in my fiction. So my fiction, I see, is an extension of my journalism. And
yeah, okay.
I want to say, what's it like to be that person? You can't really do that on TV and news, or even documentaries.
True.
You try, but you can't really do it. Whereas I think in fiction, if you understand the person, the time, the period, what they're going through, you have a better chance at making the reader understand what it was like to be that person. And in my first novel, The List, that was very...
Yeah, I have it here.
Yeah, The List. That was about London in 1945. What was it like to be a Jewish refugee in London?
Immediately
after World War II. When the war ended on that day, now you're a refugee in London, you sat the war out there, thank God you survived. What do you do the rest of your life? How do you get on with the rest of your life not knowing what happened to your family in the Holocaust? And actually, I'm writing about my own family.
Your own family.
That's
I was
what
going to
happened.
say that, yes.
Yeah, that's what happened. My parents were refugees from Vienna, and when the war ended, they had no idea who was alive or who was dead. So I wondered, well, what was it like? What do you do? You go to the Woburn House, you go to the Baptist, believe it or not, you go to the Red Cross, they all have these lists of who's
alive and
who's
dead.
where. Yeah. So unfortunately, by the time I understood my Jewishness enough to be interested in these subjects, my parents were already dead, and we'd never spoken about these subjects.
You never talked about it?
No, not a word. My parents never spoke a word about anything.
Isn't that interesting? There were a lot of people, when Schindler's List came out, I remember doing we had a 2-hour program on Schindler's List on Mosaic, and I remember talking to the Holocaust survivors who came and spoke with me and said they never said a word to their children until Schindler's List came out. And it became, world knowledge. And everybody read it and saw it and whatever.
Yeah.
And they felt comfortable. Otherwise, they didn't feel comfortable sharing that with their children.
There are a few iconic
I think
moments.
that's terrible.
Yes, it was terrible. And there's a few iconic moments in American Jewish history and worldwide, I guess, where those moments came. You remember, was it the 70s or the 80s when the Holocaust series ran on TV?
Right.
That was a moment when people came to life. In Israel, it was the Eichmann trial in 1961, where until then no one spoke about it. Afterwards, people spoke about it. What happened was that the survivors couldn't speak to their children about it for all kinds of traumatic reasons. But they could speak to their grandchildren about it, interestingly enough.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and in Israel, when the grandchildren of the survivors began writing their shoreshim, roots, homework at school, when they were about 10, 12, 13 years old,
that's interesting.
then they began to ask their grandparents, hey, Saba, hey, Safta, where were you in 42, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they started to talk. And I did research for Walking Israel on this subject, and for all of these books. And I met many survivors whose spouses, who were not survivors, said in tears that they'd never heard their spouse talk about it, ever. And then they started telling their grandchildren.
What's amazing? First of all, the end of this book is a tearjerker, okay? This one, The List. When he puts the name of his baby on the list, and it was the only name.
Oh, thanks for telling the end of the story. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Goodness.
I'm joking.
It really got me. At any rate, seriously, when you think about how they lived and how they survived, I used to think about it. I spoke to one Holocaust survivor, and I remember her telling me, I may live in West Palm Beach, but every night I sleep in Auschwitz. So the coming out of this and getting rid of it is I don't think it never happens. It lives with you forever, you know? But you write about after the Holocaust. There's so many books written about the Holocaust. These people are after the Holocaust.
No, that's right, and I did that specifically for that reason. I personally don't like to read about the Holocaust. I find it too disturbing.
Well, it is.
And I can't read about it. And I didn't want to write another book about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Lots of novels, fiction has been written about the build-up to war, the Holocaust, Israel. Very little is written about the day after.
Yeah, it's true.
What do you do with the rest of your life? And that's a subject that I followed throughout all my work as a journalist. You know, we'd always arrive in Rwanda and Kosovo and Somalia and I don't know where, all these places, that, you know, immediately after something happened. If we were unlucky, it continued around us. But basically, it was, okay, you're alive, now what? And so that's the question that I was very concerned with as a journalist, and that bled over into fiction. So and at a certain point, I asked myself, wait a minute, I come from the biggest story of all time, just about.
It's true.
My parents were refugees from the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. Why don't I write about what was it like for them?
Yeah. You really fall into the character, though. I mean, you do. You get, when you write, the character becomes very much a part of you. Isn't that true?
Well, I felt very strongly about it.
Yeah, I think you did. No, that's exactly how you feel when you read it. This one was interesting. This is your latest book, Jacob's Oath. And this is about, it's a moral dilemma, which is interesting. You want to share that with our viewers?
Yeah. I forget.
No. He wanted to get his brother was killed.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
Or let's see where we're going.
That's right. No, it's true. Well, there were several dilemmas. I guess the main thing was the real dilemma that I wanted to get at the heart of was, so now the list was written about Jews in London, 1945.
Right.
Jacob's Oath is written about Jews in Germany, 1945,
yes.
The same period. 2 Holocaust survivors. And what I wanted to get at was revenge. What's more important, revenge or, well, basically the past or the future, love or hate? Mm-hmm. That's the dilemma that my characters face. Mm-hmm. To take revenge on the prison guard who killed my character's brother, Jacob's brother, Maxie,
right.
Or not,
the rat.
or
the
to
rat.
sort of get on with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
The rat, yeah, Hans the rat, his nickname. And that's what the book is all about. Really, that's really the heart of the story is what's more important, the past or the future? And can you get on with the future without dealing with the past?
Yeah, we're not going to tell the end in this, okay, I promise, all right? Speaking about the dilemma and moral dilemmas and the situation, let's talk a little bit about Israel. The situation that's taking place now with Kerry, with the possible peace process and everything else, what is your opinion on this? Or do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, sure. I've lived there for a long time. Well, it's very difficult because it depends. You can actually say anything on this subject and be as right as anybody else. That's one of the glories of being a journalist in Israel. It doesn't matter what you say; you're going to be right and you're going to be wrong. So nobody can really object to what you say.
You say we go to Israel where predictions die, right?
Yeah, really. Well, why bother predicting? But what I think personally is that no one's ready for peace. Nobody wants peace. When I say nobody, none of the leaderships on either side wants peace. I think that the essential horror, really, of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is that neither side yet believes it needs to make peace. Israel believes it's strong enough that in the long run it can dictate terms. The Palestinians believe that time is on their side. And then, so therefore, neither side is yet ready to compromise. And at the same time, I do believe strongly that about 65%, roughly, of Israelis and the same number of Palestinians would probably sign any peace agreement that was on the table, just because they've had the conflict up to here.
Yeah.
So it's a big contradiction.
Yeah, but you know what I think is missing something is trust, the element of trust. Neither side trusts the other. And I don't know how you can develop a relationship of living side by side without any trust. I mean, Israel's worried about its security, reasonably so, and the Palestinians feel that Israel is not honest with them. How is this ever going to be any resolved? Can you see it?
Well, trust is about the last thing you can expect from anybody at the moment, and it's certainly the last thing they show towards each other. No one trusts anybody. And if you wait for trust, or if you wait for a real desire for peace, you're never going to make any progress. The whole question of a peace process is almost a contradiction in terms, because the closer you actually really get towards peace, the more the extremists on both sides will blow it up, and have done so in the past through violence. So really, I think that I actually personally think, I've come to believe that the Peres idea, Shimon Peres idea of economic peace, of building relationships, of cohesive relationships, where the two peoples become interrelated on different levels, and then that's what you should aim for. And then peace is a long way down the road. But there's no sign, for instance, today among the Palestinians that the leadership is preparing the young people to make peace with Israel. I mean, it's totally the opposite situation,
exactly right.
completely the opposite. And on the Israeli side, you can't say that. There's a lot of effort on the Israeli side to understand the Palestinian issue. There's hundreds, literally hundreds, of small organizations that are dealing with Israeli-Palestinian bilateral relations. You know, helping children, bringing kids to the Palestinian kids to the all kinds of
To
things.
the hospitals.
All kinds of
yes.
charitable works going on, and that's what you just need. That's the groundwork, you know. But as I say, I don't think either side is ready for peace.
Yeah, it's a big worry. You know, the big thing that happened, there was a lot of transaction economically between Jordan and Israel. I mean, they have business. Now we have this gas opportunity that Israel is going to, be able to revitalize the whole area if people would just join in. I mean, the opportunity is unimaginable, and it's just sad. You know, it's so sad. It's hard to live there. It's joyous but hard.
That's that's well put. It's joyous but hard, but very worthwhile.
Oh my
very
God.
worthwhile.
Yes.
And each side, the Israelis and the Palestinians, they're such wonderful people, individually. You go to anybody's home, you're treated so well. And also, an interesting thing is also whenever you sit with a group of Israelis, it's sort of outside the bubble of Tel Aviv, so parts of Jerusalem, Caesarea, you go down to the what they call the periphery towns, and the same among the Palestinians. Whenever you sit with a group, they always say, if it was up to me, and Moshe and Yossila and here, and Ahmed and Mustafa, we'd make peace in 5 minutes. They all say that. I mean, they always say that because it's it's not true.
All right, listen, you know the best thing? I'm waiting for your next book.
Well, you know what? I sent it to the publisher yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you, really.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it too.
That was really fascinating.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I particularly enjoyed listening to David Phillips as well, and the fact that he's in charge of our Jewish Federation is really very thrilling.
Yes, we were very fortunate to have those gentlemen join our program today. And thank you for joining us as well. We look forward to seeing you again next week as we take another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from Mosaic.